Hi gang, welcome to the podcast. It's episode 3 of Success Won't Come Calling. I'm Simon Gibson, checking in. And today my guest is Brendan Collins. Brendan is one of the pioneers of the UK drum and bass scene. His artist name is Futurebound, and he's released music and produced his own music for many years, both as a solo artist and also as part of the successful duo Matrix and Futurebound. Brendan is also in business. He owns Viper Recordings, which has a roster of some of the best drum and bass talent from all over the world. Brendan also is a very successful DJ and has played at clubs and festivals all over the world for many years. I'm looking forward to asking Brendan about the early days of his years in the music industry, about things he learned, about his own musical inspirations, and also about how he's dealt with tough decisions as they presented themselves in his career. I want to ask him about what he thinks the future holds now that we're heading out of this really difficult COVID period for the entertainment industry. And in particular, I want to ask how he's been able to diversify his own business, which is Viper Recordings, in such a way to leave him with so many options. We're going to have the website for Viper Recordings on our socials. I would recommend that you take a look at that. They have Viper Radio, which I really recommend you check out, along with the Viper clothing brand and lots of other stuff on there, along of course with Brendan's fantastic music. So without further ado, I'm Simon Gibson. This is episode 3 of Success Won't Come Calling with my guest Brendan Collins. Ready? Here we go.
Brendan, thanks for doing this.
Good to be here, mate.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
And obviously we're friends.
Yeah.
But I'm also a massive fan of your music, and I've been for many, many years. And I've really admired what you've done with your business, Viper Recordings. So much to talk to you about. But before we get stuck in, it's Guest Rider. What have you got us drinking?
I've gone for a spiced rum and coke today, Sam. Do you know what? I like a multitude of drinks, mate, but there's something about that one. It's nice and relaxing, do you know what I mean?
It is. It's the first drop I've ever had.
And it's good to get away from lager and gin and tonics. It's just a little different one I like.
It is, well, it's lovely. And thanks for choosing it, and thanks for coming in. Here's to you.
Cheers.
All the best. Right, so where do we jump in? I think that our sort of love of music developed around the same time. Obviously, I've not done anything with it like you have, but it was the early 90s, wasn't it, when you first started taking steps into music being your career? Just tell me what your recollection of that period of time was.
But you know what? I went through school, being an idiot in school, not taking it seriously, and I during like the back end of the 80s, I discovered this new music, house music.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'd always been into breakdancing. And then I'd seen this World in Action program as well. And it was about acid house and like the evil acid house they were calling it and stuff. And like, because obviously there was ecstasy involved and whatever. And I just remember seeing it. And I think, I just thought, hang on a minute, the music that they're playing on this program, I've been buying some of this. And so it linked that. I didn't even know that. I liked it, you know what I mean? And so when I left school, I just basically fell out of school and straight into the music scene. It was like, I remember going to a rave. I can't remember which one it was first, but it was just like a whole new world, mate, you know what I mean? It was like a DJ controlling the crowd, but with hypnotic music. It wasn't like, chart music or anything like that. It was, for the most part, instrumental music, and it just grabbed me, mate. You know what I mean? And it was like a game changer overnight. I was like, "This is me. This is what I want to do." Do you know what I mean?
I do. I mean, you said it's a whole new world. I mean, I started clubbing probably a couple of years after you, and I met you first. I think you were working in 3 Beat Records, weren't you? Which was did you work
Unity
in
Records.
Unity Records, which was like the main electronic music shop in Liverpool.
That and 3 Beat, they were the 2 like main shops, But,
and so I started going around the same time, and that issue of it being a new world, I felt that as well. And also I felt, you know what, all the music I've listened to growing up, I've liked some of it, but this house music, this is mine. This is ours.
Yeah.
And there was a period of a couple of years where when you were going out raving, when you were going out clubbing, there was nothing but unity and nothing but kind of happiness. And that's my do you remember that period?
Mate, do you know what? As I said, I fell out of school and whatever, and I realised I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I'd found it there and then. It was music, do you know what I mean? Like I'd never learned a musical instrument. So it was kind of like just, okay, yeah, what's this? I like this, you know what I mean? And this is something I want to kind of learn more about. And that's exactly what I did. And do you know what as well? It felt like a bit of a rebellion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a revolution, do you know what I mean? Like, because the 80s growing up and stuff, it was quite grimy, you know, from older people that, you know, that we knew as well. Like, they were saying how grim it was, they couldn't get jobs and the rest of it and whatever. And so I do remember it was a bit grim and all that and stuff, and it felt like you were part of a revolution, like something brand new, do you know what I mean? But obviously, it come from America. And the UK had grabbed hold of it and kind of turned it into its own. Do you know what I mean?
And it did turn it into its own, didn't it? So when was the point when, amongst that really happy, positive period, where you made the decision, having left school, that you wanted to enter the music business? What prompted you to do that?
Well, my mum and dad still work to this day, you know what I mean? And like they're workaholics and whatever. My dad's obviously one of those traditional guys who grew up in the building game, and he's kind of, you know, he's a surveyor and whatever. And he was like always trying to get me into education. So I ended up going to university, believe it or not, you know what I mean? And getting like, but that was more for him to please him, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember like something happened and I got like a job thing and whatever. And I went on this building site and everyone was screaming at each other. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to last 5 minutes here. Someone's going to scream at me and I'm going to scream back, and that's going to be that. So anyway, I just knew, yeah, it's music I want, you know what I mean? But I'd say the first time, one of the guys who I used to go to a club called Quadrant Park in Boole, and that's still the club that the best club that I've never played at. I always think about that, and that's how I describe it. It was just amazing, do you know what I mean? And obviously, I was so into the music and whatever, and I'd studied the music so much about like how DJs would perform and whatever. And so that was the natural progression to me. I wanted to kind of get decks, and I wanted to do what they were doing, do you know what I mean? And then, so that's what I did. I learned that. And I remember playing, there was a club called Fallows.
Oh, yeah.
And
I didn't know you played there.
Yeah, well, on Monday nights used to be the rave night.
They did.
And kindly enough, a friend of mine, Barry Fallow, who his dad owned the club and whatever, he gave me a shot and whatever on the Monday night, early doors. And I remember Groove Rider, Fabian Groove Rider, one of my heroes, you know what I mean, back in the day. And I remember Groove Rider standing behind me, but I didn't know he was there. And when you know you've done well on your first outing of anything, but then one of your heroes is behind you, and I pulled the wrong needle off the deck and stuff, and I was like, went weak at the knees, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean that was the start for me, do you know what I mean? And I wanted more of it, you know what I mean? And I'd never regarded myself as a performer when I was growing up or anything like that. Although you and the lads probably would have thought it's different, you know what I mean? But no, so yeah. Obviously, when I got a taste for it, I just wanted more then and more, you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, obviously going out around the clubs around Liverpool to start with, but then I was going further afield then, do you know what I mean? And travelling to like, it was coming out the illegal scene then. So there was like, there were festivals, like, but like just UK festivals around the country, do you know what I mean? Like in small, and it was all one music back then, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It was all house music then. But then like this, like, there was like a big Belgian influence coming. And they were bringing a bit of breakbeat and 4/4 kick drums, a mixture of both, you know what I mean? And I thought, I like a bit of this and stuff. And I'd always been into the like breakbeat scene and whatever and stuff. And that's why it made sense to me, do you know what I mean? To go down the jungle drum and bass route, you know what I mean?
Well, let's just pause there because I'm conscious. I mean, drum and bass has really lasted the test of time, and there are obviously there's great drum and bass music out now. But for anyone who hasn't heard drum and bass or jungle music, they used to call it sometimes, didn't they, back in that day? What's a useful starting point for someone if they wanted to go back to the 90s and listen to a drum and bass album or drum and bass song, which is sort of defined the era at that point?
I'd have to say there's two in terms of an album's like defining something. I'd say Goldie's Timeless album, and I'd say LTJ Buchan Logical Progression. And obviously, when anything starts, it's always in its infancy. It's always a bit rough around the edges, in it. You know what I mean? Like the house scene was, you know what I mean? And then jungle was exactly the same. The production wasn't great. People were sampling records, and it was the timing of the records and everything was all loose, you know what I mean? But I think around about 1993, 94, LTJ Buchan and Goldie had come on the scene, and some of the guys for Hero and stuff, and they just turned, like, it made the scene turn a corner, do you know what I mean? In terms of like the production, the actual sound. It had gone from like a ragga sound, which is like big influences of, the Jamaican sound system. That's still a massive part of it now, by the way. But I just remember back at that moment and stuff, that was the turning point where everyone outside of drum and bass or jungle who didn't get it, that was the moment that they got it. Do you know what I mean? When Goldie did Timeless and when Buchan did Logical Progression. Yeah,
I remember both those albums, and it felt to me at the time like it was being made not mainstream, because it wasn't mainstream, but it was being made more professional. I suppose you would say it was more polished.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I would say. Yeah, as I say, the production had gone up a different level. You know what I mean? They were kind of making their own drums. They were getting live vocalists in and all these sort of things that hadn't been going on before, really. Do you know what I mean? And I say that was the turning point then. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, yeah, this is where I want to be now. And to be honest, I was hooked anyway. Do you know what I mean? I was already in the jungle scene anyway. That,
Yeah. And it definitely was the turning point for you, wasn't it? Because you started making music as Futurebound not that long after those records. So it was like mid-90s.
Yeah.
You started actually recording. And is that right? What was that experience like?
Well, to be honest, the first time I actually put a record out was 93 on a white label. And there was a couple of us involved and whatever. And it was on the New Force project. And it was terrible. I listened back to it now. I mean, me and Matrix, not so long ago, we listened back to our first records, and oh my God, it's laughable. Do you know what I mean? But everyone's got to start somewhere, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? And I remember sitting outside Black Market Records. I met this guy who was going to distribute them for me. We pressed about 500 white labels, and I'm sitting there stamping outside Black Market Records, and Ray Keith and Nicky Blackmarket come out to me, and they're like, "What are you doing, you northern monkey? Come inside and do it." You know what I mean? I was like, "Say between me legs."
That's amazing.
But yeah, no, good memories, man. Do you know what I mean?
And by that point, as well, as we moved through the 90s, you were making music as Futurebound, but by that point, you were DJing extensively, weren't you? What did you making music do for your opportunities as a DJ?
That's the reason why I got into it, to be honest. I've always been a DJ before a producer. I always will be. That's what I got into it for.
Yeah.
But I knew around about 93, 94 that if I didn't get involved in the production side of things, I was like, I'd always probably just stay a DJ in Liverpool. And that's what always happens. You'll always stay inside your kind of area, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to break outside, you've got to show people on the other side of the world that, that's what I do, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you like it and they buy into it, then that's amazing, do you know what I mean?
So your credibility increased, your profile increased. I mean, you've you've DJ'd since then. You've DJ'd all over the world. You don't know how many countries you've DJ'd in, do you?
Do you know what? No, I've
Is
never
there any
counted.
you haven't?
Every time I'm on a plane, I always get the map out, in the booklet and whatever, and I'm like, I've been there. So it's been a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Because you've been to Australia and New Zealand, you've been to Japan, you've been to America, you've been to South America.
Yeah. I've been to like Japan about 15 times. I've been to Australia and New Zealand. I've done about 5 to 10 tours out down there. Do you know what I mean? And same in America. But yeah, to be honest, back in the 90s, I was dipping my toe in the pond a little bit, you know what I mean? And when you're young like that, and obviously all your mates like yourselves and whatever, you usually all gone into work then and stuff, and you were going out the weekends and stuff. So I didn't want to miss out, you know what I mean? There was also, I wanted to still go clubbing with you guys and going out drinking and whatever, you know what I mean, as you do. So, and because I was up here and like drum and bass and jungle, it's a London thing. It was a London thing back then, you know what I mean? And that was a problem as well, because for most people outside of London who were into the music, because it just hadn't grown that big yet, outside of London. And then, but I was going out and stuff at the weekends and stuff, and even though I'd started releasing records throughout the 90s, I was tipping my toe in it, and I never really went for it, you know what I mean? And then it got towards the end of the 90s, and it started this new night called X.
Oh, yeah,
in Liverpool.
Yeah, it was at Labato.
It was at Labato first, yeah.
I mean,
I've been doing nights right through the 90s. Like, we were one of the first gangs to be doing like jungle nights, and like no one wanted to do it. We did a massive night in Royal Court, and we had all sorts on there, and about 300 people turned up in a 1,500 capacity venue. Do you know what I mean? This is 1993, 94.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we kind of jumped too soon with that one, you know what I mean? But like, it was all good experience, you know what I mean?
Totally.
That's everything's, you've got to lose before you can win, I think, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we talk a lot on the podcast about, is this issue that successful people have usually got a tale to tell. I mean, I definitely have.
Yeah.
Just let's jump back to what you were saying earlier about you get into a stage in your life when your mates and others around you are working, they've got the paycheck coming at the end of each month. As long as they kind of keep the nose clean and keep turning up, they're going to get that money guaranteed. And when you embark on a career as an artist, as a musician, there ain't any paychecks. And was there a point where you wondered ever whether the benefits and the excitement and the inspiration that music gave you was outweighed by the risk of kind of falling behind? Did you ever have any doubts?
Oh, mate, loads of doubts. Everyone who gets into it has doubts because, as I say, you're self-made. You're making it for yourself. It's like anyone starting a business, you know what I mean? You've got to make this work. If it doesn't work, kaput, you know what I mean? And so when you get into that, I mean, the music game's hard. I won't lie. It's like the film industry. It's hard to break through. You know what I mean? You've got to have something about you. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to have pure grit and determination. But I guess that's what any business is. You know what I mean? It's not with it. It's everything. But yeah, there was times, mate, when obviously I'd seen all the guys going out and whatever, and like they were all working and stuff, and then you'd almost feel a bit embarrassed with your mum and dad as well, like that. All my mates are working and that I'm not. I'm trying to make it in the music game,
That's really interesting.
And then, but like, as I say to you, I'd started doing these nights and whatever, and through the 90s and whatever. And I always remember around about 98, I started this night called X at Labato. And I'd noticed that around that time, there was more and more students coming to the city, especially ones from down south. The Southerners loved the drum and bass and jungle, do you know what I mean? And we started this night, and then it just went through the roof from there. I mean, they were legendary nights, you know what I mean, in the city.
And was that, sorry, was that the point where you thought, because you referred earlier to dipping your toe in during the 90s, was that the point when you made a great success of X? And I remember it because you had the leading drum and bass acts from all over the country and internationally coming over to play. It was a great night. Was that the point when you thought, time now to fully commit and sort of move forward very positively?
That was the start of that thinking, yeah. And I remember also a lot of our guys, my mates and whatever, were going to Australia. That was the thing to do, go through Asia, go to Australia and go stay down there for a year or two or whatever. And I remember having big bad FOMO and stuff, and I was thinking, I'm going to miss out here, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I also remember thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute, I've got the night going there, you know, I'm producing, I'm starting to get on a roll again now with the music. I'm getting shows here and there. I wasn't busy, but I was getting shows. Things were starting to move, do you know what I mean? And then I remember thinking to myself, if I go there, that's the end of the music now. Probably, it might not have been, but I thought, if I stay here, I've got to go for this now and stuff. And I made the decision to stay. And then that was it. Then I thought, okay, there's no messing about now. I'm going for this. I started hiring a room in Park Street Studios, where I was working from. So I was like commuting in every day. And it was becoming a job then, do you know what I mean? And I was up on my skills, you know, on the production side of things. And I was with a label called Infrared, which was Jay Magic's label. And he was having a lot of success at the time, Jamie and stuff. And I was helping bring some artists over to his label on a couple of compilations that we were putting together on his label. And I remember enjoying the experience, you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, you know, I could start a label now, you know, and get into this and kind of do it properly and stuff. And I was having those sort of thoughts then, do you know what I mean? But I thought to myself, if I do it, it's got to be with the right sort of tunes. You know, I've got to have 2 strong records that everyone wants. And I made those 2 records, and there was a lot of big labels, like, you know, a lot of big, Goldie wanted to sign one of them, Dillinger wanted to sign another, and they had 2 of the biggest labels at the time, like Metalheads and Valve. Yeah. Who, you know, if you went on there, you know, obviously you were in the spotlight in the scene, and kind of, you would have probably got like shows off the back of it, and it would have, like, you know, helped you elevate you onto like better stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, oh God, what do I do here? Do you know what I mean? I was like, should I get, you know, signed to one of them, get some bookings in and whatever, and then you know, that could be massive. And then I thought, do I start the label now? And that's what I did. So I started the label, and started Viper, and it was the best thing I've ever did.
Well, I want to come in because we're going to have a break in a minute, just for a minute slots just for the sponsor. But I want to come to Viper and also the Matrix and Futurebound partnership forming. But just tell me, as you reflect upon that early part of your career, you've talked about the point where you had self-doubt, but was there ever a point where you felt sort of overwhelmed by challenge? And if so, what was the cause of that, and how did you deal with it?
I've never felt overwhelmed by challenge. Don't know, don't ask me why, but I've never felt like that. But I like challenges, you know what I mean? And yeah, when I started that label, it's like anything in life. It's like when you start something, the more like self-confidence you can give yourself, you know? I think if you start having any sort of thoughts where you, oh God, am I doing the right thing here? Or don't do it. It's not right. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. But everything at that time felt 1,000,000% right to me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of that issue of, if you've got that self-belief, if you've got that clarity, if someone tries to tell you, oh, you can't do that, you can't make a business, you can't make a career, you can't make a living out of the music business, well, you've got to tell them it's them who need to shut up.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, just shooting back to the 90s there, obviously, when I started the Futurebound thing, there was a small crew of us doing it, you know what I mean, in Liverpool, and we were doing the nights as well, and kind of like obviously getting on the tunes. And when it started, I couldn't really produce that, but I was still learning my skills, you know what I mean. And obviously I knew what I wanted to do, whatever, in the tracks. I knew I wanted them to sound, but I was still learning, you know what I mean. But I remember a few of the guys who were in our gang, we were putting the nights on, and they were saying, oh, we're never going to be as big as like Doc Scott. We're never going to be as big as like Buckham or whatever. And I remember turning around to them and saying, well, you need to get out of this now, because, and it's probably like laughed their heads off at me, and I remember they were laughing their heads off, and I was like, I'm going to be bigger than them. But that's what I had to tell myself. I just still don't reckon I've ever thought that I was ever bigger than those guys. But I had to tell myself that to kind of get to the next level. Do you know what I mean? Because if I think anything else, what's it going to be? You know what I mean?
And that self-belief has defined the second part of your career as well, which we're going to come to after the break. So we're going to have a short break now, guys, but we're back with Brendan, Futurebound, straight after half time.
It's half time, friends. Thank you to today's sponsor, who are my friends at Zeus Technology Solutions. Zeus are a full-service tech business providing system and software support to business clients. Zeus is still on their recruitment drive. They have a large number of positions for developers and .NET developers, or for those who want to retrain into these interesting areas. So in the socials for the podcast, you can find the website for Zeus Technology Solutions. If you fit the bill or you think someone else that you know does, please do check it out. It's an inspiring place to work with a good package, with great benefits, flexible working, and very interesting clients to do work for. So that's Zeus Technology Solutions. Check out the website on our socials. And now it's time to go back to my chat with Brendan Collins, aka Futurebound.
Welcome back. We're back with Brendan Collins, aka Futurebound. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, mate. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. So we'd got up to the point where you'd taken that decision not to sign with one of the other drum and bass labels, and you started Viper Recordings. So tell me about that time. What did you do to start Viper?
As I say, I've been getting some experience while I was over at Matrix label, Infrared and stuff, and obviously I'd been doing it like for 10, 15 years then, do you know what I mean? Kind of, releasing records, 10 years of releasing records and whatever. So I kind of knew how the back end of labels worked, you know what I mean? And kind of what you had to do to get it over there. And at the time, when you start a label, you've got to have a distributor. And that is your middleman to kind of getting the records to all the stores. So, I knew a lot of them anyway, the distributors as well, you know what I mean? And you build up contacts over the years and stuff. And so, yeah, I kind of knew everything, what I was going to do. It was just a matter of getting, the pieces of the jigsaw and putting it together, you know what I mean? And I didn't want to just come in with one record and then go missing for a while and whatever. So I had a number of records from different artists like J Magic and Wickerman on the second release, and then I got Baron to do a remix of the third one, and so it went from there really. And obviously back then I launched the label in 2004, and back then there wasn't as many artists, there wasn't as many DJs, you know what I mean. There wasn't as many labels, you know what I mean. So everything had a shelf life for a longer period. You know what I mean? So you could release a record and it would stay around, for longer, you know what I mean? Whereas now, fast forward to now, and it's like, there's a gazillion records coming out every week, Like, a kid who's just got into it could start a label and
that's it.
Give it to a distributor and he's releasing it. And that's the problem for me right now, because the quality and the quality and too much quantity is just, it's saturated right now.
Yeah, I want to come to that. It's a really good point. I think that probably runs alongside the advent of streaming and that sort of thing. So we'll come to that. But tell me, you'd spent a number of years working creatively, creating music, DJing, traveling the world. And then when you started Viper, you said about putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together. You were having then to wear a business hat, weren't you? Because you were having to put something together that was going to function as a business. How did you have to change, or did you have to change the way you were thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I say, from that moment that I decided not to go to Australia with my mates and whatever, and this is what I was going to do. That was it. Then I was going for it. You know what I mean? And when I get something into my head, I'm gonna make it work. I'm just one of those people. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you fail. Sometimes it goes through the roof, doesn't it? You know what I mean? But I was determined to make this work. Do you know what I mean? And when I started the label, I was getting better as a producer as well. Do you know what I mean? And kind of get more consistent with the releases. But in terms of like the business side of things and whatever, I had to learn some new things and like accounting. I'd never had to done that before. You know what I mean? Like, and it's kind of like, you know, just like different things that goes into it and stuff. And it's okay when you're doing releases on a record label for yourself. You know, you can be a bit slow and whatever.
Yeah.
When you're starting releases with other artists and whatever, like some labels out there are a bit loose and all that, but I don't like messing people about. You know what I mean? I wouldn't like it happen to me. And I never got paid by a few people in the 90s. You know, from releasing records and whatever. And I thought to myself, well, when I start this label now, I'm going to make sure that people are getting paid and whatever, and I'm to the best of my ability. You know what I mean? And there was a multitude of different things I had to start doing, like liaising with the distributor. You know, the production of vinyl is a slow thing, mate. You know what I mean? It's not like a easy 1, 2, 3. It's like a 6-week to 2-month period to get vinyl into place. And back then, it was just the one format that everyone was doing. 2004, it was still like vinyl was the thing. You know what I mean? So yeah.
And how were you? Because obviously you were still making your own music at that time, and then you were having to also transition to a business mindset. Was there anything you had to do to change between those two zones, the creative zone and the business zone?
Yeah, and it was hard, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
Because when you're a musician or an artist, whatever, you know, it is like, you know, you're like going into a room if you're making a record, and it's like having an oil, like a painting there, and you've got to go from a blank canvas and you've got to draw something. That's where your creative juices have got to come in. The other side of it, having a label, is the administration side.
Yeah.
And I hate that side. I won't lie, I hate it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a creative person. That's how my brain thinks. And some people are amazing at the other side of it, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Like my missus, like Helen, she's really good on that side of things. You know what I mean? And like the team that I've got in place now, James, Assad, Rihanna, and stuff like that, they're amazing on that side of things. You know,
well, you need that. I mean, I think the thing which and you know this, I've said this before. One of the reasons I admire you so much is because you've been able to pull off your A game as an artist with developing skills such as leadership, teamwork, strong business head, good planning. And that is very rare in my experience, to have someone who is able to sort of flip on and off two different hats without sort of losing momentum and without losing quality. So, I mean, you've done amazing, mate.
Thank you very much, Simon. I've never been had such a compliment from you in my life.
I don't get used to
Can't
it.
believe it. I'm sweating here.
Don't. So at that point,
no, to be honest, you know what? I didn't have a choice. Whatever. I'm not saying like, you know, that's how I am. I'm an amazing business person. I wouldn't say that. But I didn't have a choice. I had to make it work. You know what I mean? I had to kind of put those different hats on. And like anyone else who does the same, you know what I mean? There's plenty of like artists and who've done the same, who started really successful labels and stuff, and gone on to just learn how to kind of get that balance right. It's all about balance, isn't it? You know
It is about balance. So at this point, Viper was up and running. You were a successful artist in your own right. You were DJing all over the world. And then the Matrix and Futurebound partnership formed. Tell me about that period and what your memory of that is.
So me and Jamie had known each other like for years, going back to the mid-90s, and we actually came through at the same time and whatever. And him and his brother had built up a great portfolio of tracks. You know what I mean? They were actually, there's a subgenre of drum and bass called Neuro, and it's like more like the techno side of D&B. Do you know what I mean? And they were kind of one of the founders of that sound, you know what I mean, and what they did and stuff. So they were legends. That's what I would say. I would term them as legends because they broke new grounds at the time in the mid-90s. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, me and Jamie had kind of known each other for years and whatever, and they just meet at various shows we were playing at, or music house where we were cutting dub plates, and then we were playing a show in Belgium, and we just the usual. Let's get on a tune, let's do it, you know, at an after hours drink thing after we played the show, you know, and he came to mine. We did a tune, I went to his, we did another tune, and then it went from there then, like, you know what I mean? And kind of every time we got together, it just worked. And sometimes when you go in with someone, it can be, you know, you can hit a brick wall, you know what I mean? You can hit a brick wall with yourself, you know what I mean? But sometimes it's worse when you go in with someone and it doesn't work, you know what I mean? It's like, oh God, how can I get out of this? You know what I mean? And, so anyway, every time we got in the studio, it just, the magic happens, you know what I mean? It was wicked. And between six to 9 months down the line of after making that first one, we done a remix of American Beauty off the film.
Oh, of course, I remember that.
Thomas Newman. He's into like Thomas Newman, and I'm a big fan of like that style.
The
like
soundtracks
film
and scores,
yeah. I love cinematic music, and so we said let's do this and whatever, and it blew up the tune. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was like track number 3 that we'd made. You know what I mean? Into our kind of like collaboration. And and then it went from there really. That was blowing up and everyone was DJing. The tracks were working in clubs. I remember going to Fabric one night and there was like, between both rooms of Fabric, that I think I heard our records getting played about 15 times that night, I counted. And I thought, you know, something's going on here, do you know what I mean? People are liking this. And when we started working together, drum and bass had kind of been in like 2 lanes almost, you know what I mean? It was a thing called jump up or some genre. It was like really full on kind of dance floor music, do you know what I mean? And there was liquid. And there was nothing kind of in between because we liked the energy of the jump up and the kind of the musicality of the liquid sound, which Fabio had started back in the 90s. And so we were like, let's try and bridge it together, you know what I mean? That's where our sound stemmed from, do you know what I mean? And obviously, you know, when we started working together, then, as I say, everyone was DJing the records out in the clubs and stuff and playing them out. And we just said, look, we've got like an abundance of records here, like, and they're all smashing it. A club, should we do an album? Put this together. It was never a plan. It was just like, let's do it.
And that was Universal Truth. That was the first album, wasn't it?
Yeah, Universal Truth. Yeah. And
which I think I asked the question earlier about what would be a good point of reference for someone who'd never listened to any drum and bass in the 90s. For me, that's a great starting point as a record for someone who hasn't heard drum and bass in the 2000s, because I agree with what you're saying about you forging something that was quite new, because it was quite an expansive sound that you had. It combined what I liked about the sort of drum and bass from the 90s, but also with something that was a bit more sort of cinematic.
Well, cinematic and a bit of a house influence in it as well. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's what did it. You know, we kind of carved its own sort of lane, the sound that we did. And it just went from there, mate. And obviously the album blew up. I mean, still getting people now, like guys saying, oh, mate, that's the album that got me into drum and bass. And it's amazing to hear when people say that to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like an accomplishment when I hear people say that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I'm not interested in the money. That's when I hear people say that to me. That's you know, that's a massive tick, though.
Well, you've got to earn a living, haven't you? But at the end of the day, if that's all you think about, then you're probably not achieving what you could. So when you get recognition and sincere recognition, there's no one in the world in any job who doesn't value that. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
From a business perspective. So I think in terms of money, we talked about the fact that you had those points back in the 90s where you were faced with crossroads in terms of where your career was going to go. What sort of happened after both we had Viper up and running, Matrix and Futurebound had gained a good degree of popularity. Then as we enter the 2010s, to my recollection, what happened was that, again, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the mainstream radio stations, particularly Radio 1, they themselves went through a little bit of an evolution. Was that when they sort of pinpointed drum and bass as something they could really kind of buy into?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the moment where the airwaves done drum and bass a massive favour.
Yeah.
Because drum and bass had always been seen as, can I swear on this program?
Of course, yeah, you say whatever you want,
Okay,
mate,
well,
yeah.
drum and bass has been known as the bastard child of electronic music.
Really?
And still is. Yeah, it was,
Didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what it's known as. And they used to, if it was allowed on a festival, it was being the shittest tent.
Like the tent, yeah.
It'd have the crappiest sound system.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, just give them that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And once Annie Mac, Zane Lowe, and Mr. Jam
Yeah.
hit Radio 1, I would say, you know what, like success and everything, it's about the timing, isn't it?
Totally.
You know, so we did Universal Truth, me and Jamie, and then if Annie Mac and Zane Lowe didn't champion out that album and the tracks from that, multiple tracks from that album, screaming from the rooftops about it on a Friday night, and Pete Tong as well, to be fair,
Yeah.
he was playing them. Like, would it have gone that far? You know, would it have been that big? Maybe it would have been within like the purists within the scene, but you know, it kind of elevated our sound, what we were doing. Plus people like Sub Focus, Chasing Status.
Yeah.
It was when they did albums around the same time, Pendulum, you know what I mean? And the whole thing for people like us who were doing that powerful melodic drum and bass style tracks that would work in a club, it went through the roof then, do you know what I mean? The whole scene.
It did for you as well, didn't it? Because, I mean, that was when you had a period of time where you were consistently getting Matrix and Futurebound records in both certainly the top 10 of the dance charts and the top 30 of the, what did they call them? It's like the Billboard charts or the...
What's the UK top
the
40?
UK top 40.
Yeah, but to be honest, that was later on.
Oh, okay.
That was later on, that, you know what I mean? That was like, I mean, and we're talking about like the stars, like where for the first time in Radio 1's history in the UK radio, you were in drum and bass on a consistent sort of level, like during daytime, early evening, you know what I mean? They'd flirted with it in the 90s when Buckham and Goldie had done tracks and whatever, and then Ronnie Size represents, and all the Full Cycle gang. They played some of their tracks, you know what I mean? And like Shy FX came in, J Magic.
Yeah.
But there was big gaps in between all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when we did that album, and obviously Sub Focus, Chasing Status and a few other people, it was all the time then, do you know what I mean? And there was one or two like going on to daytime then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Chris Moyles and all them. I always remember Chris Moyles used to hate drum and bass. He hated playing it.
Did he?
Yeah, he hated it.
And he did, I mean, there was quite a mix on Radio 1 then, wasn't there? But how did that change in terms of your career? Because obviously you then began to be able to access a wider audience, perhaps a more mainstream audience. How did that feel in terms of what you were, the experiences you were having?
Yeah, definitely. New doors start opening that when you got tracks that are going on the airwaves and all that. There's a bigger audience listening to it then. So yeah, new doors start opening for you, like, you know, like, and also new doors for like me as a record label owner.
Yeah,
do you know what
absolutely.
I mean? I'd never used a radio plugger before, and I remember getting to about 5 years of Viper was like coming up to its like 5th birthday and stuff, and I thought I'm going to do something special for it now, and I did put together, like I spent a year putting this album together called Axe and Madmen, and Zane Lowe made it as like album of the week on Radio 1 and stuff like that, and that wasn't just my tracks, that was like people like Neros, Ed Russian Optical done a remix, and Sigma and all these people. We really, obviously Viper was finding all these new guys in the scene, like, you know, maybe like I say Sigma done their first record, or one of the first records with us and stuff like that, and DC Breaks and Metric and Shock One from Australia, and all these guys have gone on some massive things now, do you know what I mean? So that you know, that makes me feel good when I see things like that as well, that we did those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, those doors were opening then, do you know what I mean? And as that was happening with the label, I remember that I was putting a lot of time into Viper at that point, you know what I mean? And it was starting to affect me as a producer. Right. It was starting to eat into the creative juices side. The admin was taking over, you know what I mean? I was becoming more of an A&R than I was in the studio, you know what I mean? And thinking more about creative things, what I can do with the label. Yeah, more than what I can do with myself and Matrix and all that. And I thought, I've got to sort this out now, do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's great. That's going through the roof, Viper, you know, it's really thing, you know, and I could sell, because there was a lot of artists saying, you know, love the sound that you built up, I I would really want to do something for the label. And that was great, you know what I mean? But I'm a DJ, I'm a producer, you know what I mean? I never wanted to lose that, you know what I mean? And I remember around about 2010, that's when I thought to myself, I need to get back in the studio now and I need to start working and whatever. And I remember me and Jamie, I'd had our first kid at this time, and Helen was pregnant again. And Jamie was about to have his first kid and whatever and stuff. And I remember going to a festival called Let It Roll in Czech, and we were like in the back of the car thinking, we can't keep just earning this sort of money as DJs, can we? You know what I mean? Your missus having a baby, I've got two now. I was like, got to go to the next level somehow now. Do you know what I mean? As artists and whatever, we're like, let's give it 6 months. You know what I mean?
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because you had a family and you got married during that period. How did that affect how you, and obviously you've had a period of time since then that you've continued to make music, you've continued with the label, you've continued to play all over the world. But I mean, you have made a sacrifice there, haven't you? In terms of life on the road, if you're away in Australia for a month or something, that sounds quite appealing at some level, but you're making a sacrifice there in terms of the family. How's that been?
Hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's hard, yeah. I mean, I remember, there was one time I was in Australia for like 3 or 4 weeks. Honest to God, my little fella was 18 months old at the time, and it broke me. I remember it brought me to tears. And I'm not someone who cries. I think I've cried like 3 times in the last 10 years, you know what I mean? But that was one of those moments I was like in a hotel room, like, oh my God. And I'd see him on like FaceTime or whatever what we were doing at the time, and like it killed me because he'd done his first walk as well while I was away. And I thought, oh God.
Well, I mean, the decisions you've taken in terms of where you are now, it puts you in a really strong position, doesn't it? Because you always come across to me as someone who's got a number of options now, because you've achieved commercial success as an artist yourself. You've moved into business through Viper. You've still got that appeal as a DJ. How are you thinking about the future now? We hope that we're going to return to some form of normality. How are you feeling at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a weird time, hasn't it, for everyone right now and stuff, and especially for everyone in the music game. It's like, you know, what are we going to do here? I think we're one of the worst scenes to like be affected by it. You know what I mean? Worst industries, should I say? And how do I feel about it now? I'm just praying that we get back. Yeah, at some point a little bit this year, because the longer this goes on for like an industry like ours and stuff, you know. You just don't want like a big gap where like a new era of kids to come through and feel drum and bass or feel club music is not going to happen. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just hoping that we get back, really. You know.
Well, and the signs are good, aren't they? But I'd never thought about that, what you've just said about the sort of next generation. Because if we wind it right back, I mean, I could talk to you all night, Bren, but we're gonna have to call it a wrap in a minute. But if we wind it right back to where we were at the start of when you and me were on the dance floor, we were experiencing a fantastic scene. That was an important point in my life. And I don't think it can be underestimated as we come out of this period that we have got a generation who've had a year or two who've missed out on that. And
a year will be okay. A year and a bit will be okay.
Yeah.
The longer it goes on, the harder it will become, because obviously I say it's a bigger gap, but look, when you're in a club, that's how anthems are made, when you hear them on a big rig.
Yeah.
Okay, when that bass is coming through and it just kills the dance floor. You know, that's how anthems are made. That's how new kids get into it, and kind of that's their kind of the first door of an experience at club level. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
So it's important that we get back soon.
It is, and let's hope we do. I want to ask you one final question, and you've had such a lot of success. You've succeeded as an artist. You've succeeded in business. What does success mean to you?
Success means to me, it definitely doesn't, I don't think of money when I think of success. I don't think of like accolades or anything like that. I think of like like it's personal to me, success. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Whether it's a record that I've made, whether it's a DJ set that I've played, whether it's me A&R on a record over the finishing line for one of the guys on the label. I know if I've put the right input into each of those things, you know what I mean? And if any of those things succeed and do well, that's success for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about. I think for me, happiness is the key. And because if you're not happy both in your work and in your life, then kind of money just means nothing, does it?
Means nothing to me, yeah.
And what you've just described there, I totally agree with you. It's about, isn't it? It's about trying to be better tomorrow than you were today.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you don't, then you can aim for the tomorrow, the day after.
Yeah. I just think is, you know what I mean? You gotta feel hungry about what you do. You know what I mean? And to feel hungry, you've got to be happy, as you just said. You know? Like if you're going into the office or you're going into the studio and you're like, oh God, how's it going to work? How are you going to rub off onto other people?
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like the stage that I feel like, you know, I don't want to do this today.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered going in the studio. And like, whatever, something in your life has got you grumpy or whatever, you know what I mean? And you don't want to rub that onto like your staff or the people that you're working with. Sometimes you've got to blank it out, haven't you? And just, you've got to see through that.
Well, you got to see the way
for the
forward.
good of everyone else.
You got to see the way forward, and that's what successful people do. And listen, mate, just before we wrap, I just want to say well done. I want to say congratulations for what you've achieved.
Same back to you, sir.
Thank you, mate. I mean, we've gone through 30 years there in 45 minutes, and I could go on all night. But I wish you good luck in terms of
mate.
as we move from COVID. I don't think you'll need it. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. So it's
mate,
Brendan Collins, Futurebound.
So did you enjoy your interview with Brendan?
It was great, wasn't it?
It was brilliant, really good interview, yeah.
Yeah. I got everything that I thought I would from it. The way in which, just thinking about the business side, first of all, Viper Recordings, I didn't get the chance to go into the detail on Viper Radio that I wanted to. So again, that's going to be on our socials, and I would really strongly recommend that everyone goes to listen to it and check out what Brendan's got in terms of development of his clothing brand and his back catalogue. But what came across in spades was the success that Brendan's achieved. He's not compromised his principles. In particular, you know, he had the opportunity to sign for a major label. He stood his ground. He's had times in his career when he's been faced with frustration. He's battled through them. So no, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, me too. It was a good interview. So what do you think about Brendan's plans for the future?
Well, it was great to hear how positive he was, because obviously with COVID, he's been a lot more restricted in terms of obviously things like DJing, international travel. But I thought that his positivity in terms of what comes next in his chapter was very clear. I definitely thought that his ideas, from both musically, what he's got, the way he supports the artists on his label, and also the way drum and bass has stuck around for so many years and has reinvented itself. I mean, I think he's still got a really important part to play in the scene such a long time after he started his career.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So he made you drink spiced rum. So how did you feel about that?
It was really nice.
Was it?
Yeah, I've never drank it before.
Yeah, it is quite nice, that drink.
But do you know what? It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've done we've done a number of podcasts now, and the different drinks that I've tried already is really encouraging. And long may it continue. No, I mean the whole interview with Brad I just thought was really relaxed. It was a nice chat, and I'd love to have him back.
Yeah, brilliant.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've got as much out of it as I did. Brendan Collins was a fantastic guest. Please join us back here on Success Won't Come Calling every Wednesday. This is the podcast for people who want to be better tomorrow than they were today.